Okay, let's go.
Welcome to Friday's Fireside Chat with your hosts, Karen Baxter.
And Michelle.
And welcome to, this is episode 8. So this week we are talking about reactivity. What is reactivity? What does it look like? Why does it happen? And at the end, we're going to give you some strategies on how to get started to help your dog cope with their emotional outbursts when they're out in public, so to speak. Okay, so Ed, let's get right into it. One of the things that we decided when we were talking about it, we were saying how much we find that reactivity, that word reactivity, is like a catch-all, right? It's one of those phrases that people use in many different situations, right? So why do you think this word is misunderstood?
Oh, well, I think just right there, it's people use it as a diagnosis, right? Like my dog has reactivity, where oftentimes the way we kind of use it is reactivity is more of just explaining a behavior that we're witnessing. Now, the cause of that behavior would be more of the diagnosis, right? So, is it fear? Is it over-arousal? Is it under-socialization? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then the way it is presenting itself is through reactive type behaviors.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. And I think, too, it's a bit vague. Like if somebody says, my dog's reactive, that's really vague.
Yeah.
It doesn't really tell me a lot about what's going on with that dog.
Well, I mean, like really, if we're stripping it all the way down to like the definition of the word, technically any type of behavior other than a neutral response is being reactive.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? I am reacting to whatever it is that's in my environment. So for dogs, most of the time it's going to be other dogs or people, right?
Yeah.
So you can have an incredibly friendly, well-socialized, outgoing dog who is reactive because they want to go over and meet the other dog.
Right.
So if you just say, my dog is really reactive, that's not going to really put a good picture in our head of what you're probably actually dealing with. Right?
That's correct. Like just exactly like what you said. So if the dog is reacting when it sees another dog, but it's actually a really friendly dog, it could be frustration.
Yep.
It might be they just want to get to that other dog.
Yep.
It doesn't mean anything bad. But I think the term, when most people say, my dog's reactive, I think what they're trying to say is the dog is struggling when they're out in public, right?
Yeah.
To regulate their emotion. And the appearance then is what we were talking about. What would you say that looks like?
I think the most typical reactive behaviors are going to be your barking, lunging, growling, those types of kind of more aggressive displays of frustration or fear or anxiety, stress, something along those lines.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. I really liked what you were saying when we were talking earlier about how Michael Shikashio explains it when he's talking about reactivity. And I think it was to do with arousal, right? Was it more about the arousal state?
Yeah, well, because we were talking about how does arousal, which is one of our other videos that we did, how will arousal affect reactivity? And essentially what it is the way Michael Shikashio sums it up, and I don't know if this is his way specifically or if he also heard it other ways or other places, is that all of these things are fuel that then is ignited by some sort of spark. So the spark is going to be the trigger that enters the environment, right? So if it's a dog or a person, that's the spark. But there's only an eruption because there's fuel to ignite.
Right.
So the underlying emotional response that we're getting from the dog is that fuel. So is that fear? Is that frustration? Is it anxiety? Is it stress? Is it over-arousal? Is it predatory behavior? Whatever it is, right? That spark then ignites that fuel. And then that is what you then get, that over threshold response. And then people start to say, well, my dog is reactive because I am struggling with A, B, or C.
That's right. And if you remember from last week's episode on arousal, that it's a chemical reaction. It's biology, right? So the system fills up with adrenaline and cortisol. It's their nervous system that is overwhelmed and responding. So you can almost put a visual to that. It's like a arousal. If adrenaline is flooding their system, that's like a chemical.
Yep.
So that's like the gas, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, and then you get that trigger, right, which is your spark.
Yeah.
And then the dog, because their nervous system is overwhelmed, they have no way of calming themselves down, so they're going to react.
And
right?
for us as professionals, when we're trying to combat these behaviors, that essentially is the two diagnoses that we're trying to come up with: is what is the underlying fuel here, right? Is it, like I said, is it anxiety? Is it fear? Is it some sort of trauma response? Is it some sort of under socialization? And then why are the quote unquote triggers? Why are they sparks? Right? Why is that dog treated like something that can ignite the fuel? Why is that person, in the perception of the dog, something that can ignite that stress or that anxiety? And those two types of approaches, if we can minimize the fuel, but also find a way to make those triggers not create a spark, we're going to solve that behavior.
And I know when I'm working my reactivity clinics, I have my dogs that are, when I'm talking to the people who have dogs that are reactive, in my reactivity clinics, one of the things that I highlight to everybody is that the spark is often caused by the dog's perception of what's going on in the environment and their ability to control their own safety. So if they want to be able to move towards something or move away from something and their inability to do so is the spark, then they're going to actually have an eruption because they don't feel like they have control over what's going on. And their perception is that either they're incapable of getting to something or doing something, or they are unsafe. Right.
And I think that's also a good explanation, or at least a starting point to talk about why it does seem, especially from us as professionals that see this all the time, but just in general, walking your own dog down the street, I'm sure you're seeing it as well. Why is quote unquote reactivity getting so much more prevalent in our society? And I think oftentimes it is going to boil down to alterations that have been made in the way that we live with dogs that takes away a lot of those things that you just talked about, right? It takes away their freedom, their choice. It takes away or puts pressure on them in ways that, even just 10, 15 years ago, that pressure was, if it was there, was considerably less or wasn't there at all.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, so we're going to get into that a little deeper when we start talking about rescue dogs and the difference between free living dogs and our pet dogs. But I think also we need to look at another spark, to me, is the way we sometimes handle it. So in one of our other episodes, we talked about punishment, the pros and cons, and what punishment can do and what it can't do. And I think often out of frustration, one of the challenges people have is that they just want to stop the dog's reaction instead of trying to figure out why the dog is reacting. Right? Because, and I get it. I totally get it, by the way. If a dog is reacting, it's embarrassing, it's frustrating, and we just want them to...
It's potentially harmful.
Yes, right? Exactly. So we just want them to stop in the moment, right? And so this is what we were talking about in the punishment phase. It's like, well, punishment is an easy thing to go to in the moment, but why do you think it can make reactivity worse?
I think ultimately what punishment is doing is the goal of it is to stop a behavior in its tracks in the moment. And if what we're talking about, what we just described, is that reactivity, the behaviors you're witnessing are a representation of a deeper emotional state, then by stopping those behaviors, what you're really stopping is the physical display of what they're emotionally feeling. You're not changing the emotional feeling. Right?
That's right.
So you might suppress the barking, the lunging, and the growling. And to you, it might seem like, oh, this is solved. But your dog can actually still be quite distressed. And oftentimes, this is where sometimes something really bad will happen, and people will describe it almost like, well, it came out of nowhere. It's like, maybe you missed the signs, or maybe your dog didn't feel safe to display those signs anymore. But ultimately, they still had some sort of distress under the surface, right? And I explain it sometimes to the clients that I work with reactivity is, the reason you're contacting me is because you have a problem with your dog. But the reason why you have a problem with your dog is because your dog has a problem.
That's right.
Right? Something internally is out of whack with your dog, and the displays of that or the offshoot of that is creating a problem for you in your life, which is why you reached out. And for me as a dog trainer, sometimes it's going to be quicker or maybe more profitable if right away I go, okay, well, I'll fix your problem. But then I'm ignoring what is contributing to that dog's problem. The way I want to fix your problem is by solving your dog's problem. Because if we can make your dog feel more secure, more confident, more sense of agency, whatever it is, then that's not going to create an issue for you anymore. And now both parties win.
That's right.
Right.
I think that the challenge is that certain methodologies and treatments can actually look like you fixed it. But down the road, it's going to come back out.
Yeah.
Right. And it may come back out inappropriately and worse because we took away all of the other earlier warning signs.
Yeah.
Right. We suppressed them. So
or it emerges with somebody else other than yourself.
Other than yourself. That's right.
All the time, where one half of a part of a group will say, "Well, they're fine with me."
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But then the other half are struggling.
That's right.
Right. And we could say, well, I just do this and he stops. It's like, okay. But if he's then still doing that same behavior with the other person, we didn't fix the behavior. We've suppressed the behavior in your presence.
That's correct.
And if we remove you from the equation, that behavior reemerges.
Yeah. Same with tools, right? Some of the tools, I remember I've had people say, oh, I put like a slip lead, which is like a choke, right? A choke lead.
Yep.
I put a choke lead on and I just, tightened it up on the dog and they stopped reacting. Right. So it was great because I got control in the moment and they stopped reacting. In the moment, they stopped reacting. Yeah. Right. So, but that's with that person who can do it properly in the moment and
with that tool.
With that tool.
Yeah.
It does not mean that the dog is okay in that environment. They're not. They're not okay.
Well, you see it a lot with, tools are just that. They are tools.
They're tools.
Right? And some tools can help us achieve a lot of, quick results. But the point of those tools usually is to then allow us to do the proper training on the back end.
Yes.
Right? If we only then rely on the tool, and I have this within my own family at times where, they're walking the dog on a prong and I don't feel like the dog is one that actually, merits that necessarily. And they go, well, my dog walks great. And I go, okay, well, take the prong away. Oh, no, I couldn't do that.
Exactly.
Right? If I do that, then he's all over the place. It's like, okay, well, then your dog doesn't walk great.
No.
Your dog is responding to the tool that you're using.
That's correct.
Right?
They're controlled. They're controlled by the tool. Yeah. Right. And as I often tell people who have dogs that are reactive, that loss of control actually can make them feel worse. Yeah. Right. So it doesn't really change the way they feel about being out in the environment and in the situations that we put them in. Yeah. Right.
And my one final note on punishment or correction before we move on from this one is, as we're saying, reactivity is a catch-all kind of statement.
Yeah.
So there's different motivating factors that can be behind that.
Yes.
And sometimes the response to those corrective measures or those corrective tactics are going to vary incredibly based on the emotional response. Absolutely. And if what we're maybe seeing is more of a fear reactivity, right, where they are, worried that this dog is some sort of threat, and then consistently in the presence of that other dog, you start to add a physical correction. I have seen firsthand personally where that dog then starts to pattern or pair that stimulus to that other dog, and you get an increase of reactive behavior.
Yes.
Yeah, especially when you have breeds who are not the type of breed that back down from conflict, right? It's almost like, hey, I think that dog is going to pick a fight with me. Oh, that dog is picking a fight with me. Yeah. Well, now we're going to get a big, much more elevated response. And I've seen some pretty bad outcomes because of that.
Yeah. Would you say then that, we are really big on not blaming people for things that everybody does the best they can with what they know in the moment. So this is not about blame, but I do feel, and I have seen where the human side of this equation actually contributes to the reactivity, right? Absolutely. So that besides using tools, this just even any, can you think of any of those ways that people actually contribute to the reactivity?
If we're talking about you, the way that we really like to model is that you are your dog's guide, you're its coach.
That's right.
And so your dog is extremely perceptive to how you're feeling, your body language, and what you're responding to. And the dog doesn't know that sometimes your emotional response, your own emotion, is because you're worried about something the dog is going to do.
That's correct.
So if I have a dog who's really reactive, he's lungy, he's barky, and I've been battling this, and I see the other dog, and all of a sudden I go, oh, he's going to do this, and I start to tense up, or I start to get nervous, or my own heart rate, as I tap my mic there. My own heart rate starts to race, and your dog can pattern that too, and goes, well, you're getting nervous in the presence of this other dog.
That's right.
There must be a reason.
That's right.
You wouldn't be acting this way if this dog wasn't a threat. I guess this dog is a threat. And again, you're going to see that ramping up of behavior.
That's right. So then I would say the dog is pairing your reaction to the stimulus in the environment.
Yeah.
So whether that's a dog or person, car, whatever it is they're reacting to, that, I think that it's,
and they do that
pairing.
all the time. I mean, I'm sure there's so many people watching right now that goes like, oh, my aunt's dog is just like my aunt, right? Or my brother's dog is a splitting image of my brother. I mean, it could be luck of the draw. He just adopted or adopted a dog that was just like him.
Yeah.
Or dogs mirror their main kind of influence in life, right? And they're going to pattern the behavior that they see being successful for you, right? So often, if we're dealing with, a fearful dog when people come in, well, if we can pattern calm introductions and they can see that you are welcoming this person into your home and you're not a threat, obviously there's a lot of other training that goes into it, but that is a core way to display to your dog, hey, I'm not afraid here.
That's right.
Right? But if your dog starts barking at something at the window and then you start freaking out, going, what do you see out there, buddy? Oh my God, what are you barking at? Well, your dog is going to respond the same way.
So dogs really like predictability. So the more they can predict what's going to go on and what's happening, and they have some ability to make some decisions for themselves, either approach or move away or go to a safe spot or whatever, the better they're going to be. I'm going to flip that a little bit on some ways that people might actually promote reactivity in their animal. Things like taking them into environments that the dog is struggling in repeatedly. Yeah. So, for instance, if you were walking them on a busy street or at a busy time of day, so let's say 5 o'clock or 5:30 in the evening, springtime on a nice day when everybody's out there and everybody's out with their dogs, and your dog goes out there and goes, holy smokes, where did you just take me? Yeah. And what are all these things in my environment that weren't there last week when the weather was lousy, right? Yeah. And, we don't stop and think for a moment that this dog is actually struggling with all of the things that are going on in the environment because it's unpredictable to them. Yeah. And they have no control over what's going on. So that is one of the ways that we can also contribute to the reactivity.
I think sometimes too, like you said, it's always out of good, not always, but a lot of the time it's out of good intention that, the owner might observe that and go, oh, well, what they need is more exposure to things.
That's right.
They need to get used to this.
Yeah.
But if your dog is not being successful and you continue to expose them in the same way without supplying some other way to act, all you're doing is confirming to that dog that they are handling it the appropriate way. Maybe there is something here I need to react to.
That's right. Yeah. Or, I want my dog to get used to I saw this with one client. I want my dog to get used to other dogs. So they take them to environments where there's a lot of dogs, and they take them to environments and rush the dog into greeting other dogs and exposing them to other dogs, which actually, just similar to what you're saying, actually makes the dog more sensitive to the other dogs. Yeah. That's called flooding, by the way, the technical term. So I'm flooding them with the thing they're scared of, right? In the hopes that they're going to get desensitized and get over it.
You see it so much with puppies, right? Where they go, well, I want my dog to be good around other dogs. We're going to start taking him to the dog park at 12 weeks old. And then some bad incident happens, and now they're afraid of German Shepherds for the rest of their life.
Right? That's right. Exactly. So, okay, let's pivot a little bit now, and let's talk about rescue dogs specifically. I know that you have experience because you used to work in a shelter, so you have a lot of experience with the rescue dogs, and we see a ton of clients because we are partnered with the OSPCA, so people will adopt dogs from the shelter, and then, a month, 2 months down the road, they're calling us because the dog is now showing reactivity, and it didn't show that when they first brought the dog home, or it didn't show that when they were in the shelter. Yeah. Right. So,
or we thought it would get better the more comfortable they felt.
Yes, exactly. Right. So, why do you think that many rescue dogs struggle with reactivity, especially when they're on leash?
Well, I mean, there's always got to be a caveat here that with a lot of these dogs, we don't have a full history of.
Right.
But typically, they're not finding their ways into the shelters for absolutely no reason. Right. So there could be some sort of trauma that happened. There's definitely a loss of connection that happened. There could be past behavior patterns that have been emerging that one family decided, you know what, we can't deal with this anymore. So it's not necessarily the shelter that creates the issues. It's that the shelter has kind of a high proportion of dogs that are probably going to find its way to this environment that might already have some of these tendencies. But then the shelter itself absolutely magnifies it, right? You are in an environment that the dog has zero control of. There is strange smells, strange people, strange sounds. Oftentimes they're left alone for 10 to 12 hours at night, where there's all these different things kind of going on. And the dog does not have a coping mechanism to deal with that environment because it's a brand new environment they've never had to experience before. Right. And so what they default to is their survival instincts. Right now, and we talked about arousal before, but their cortisol levels are firing, they're stressed out, they're over aroused, and now I feel like I'm in some sort of fight or flight situation, and I'm going to choose to behave a certain way. Maybe I bark and lunge at the shelter door, right, at the kennel door. Then the other contributing factor here is when you have those types of dogs, for the safety of the staff, they tend to back away, they tend to ignore. They tend to try and find ways to alleviate the rehearsal, but ultimately they don't have the time or the staff to actually deal with the emotional issue that's going on with the dog. And that is what can create what we call self-reinforcing. If I'm fearful of an environment and every time something that scares me that enters, I have a big overblown reaction and they end up leaving, that reinforces that that's a productive way to deal with that stimulus, right? So we take them out of the shelter and we bring them back out into the real world, and now they have these behavior patterns and this history of learning that is kind of contributing to a repeating of this behavior in this new setting. Right. And sometimes it doesn't happen right away. I mean, sometimes they go into this new setting and they're docile, they're calm, they're extremely sleep deprived, and you can have a dog that just conks out for even months at a time, and then all of a sudden, the more secure they feel, the more confident they feel in this new environment, these behaviors are going to start to emerge again. Right.
I think they often call that the honeymoon phase when they first get the dog, right?
And I think people, sitting at home should understand this as well. I mean, we start a brand new job. Oftentimes we are contained, right? We are a different version or a toned down version of ourselves. We're trying to lay the land. We're trying to make new relationships. And then the more comfortable we become in that environment, all of our true tendencies start to emerge, right? And you hear it constantly of, oh, well, they started to change, or I didn't realize you did this, or all these types of things. Well, really what it is them feeling more comfortable to act the way that they probably were compelled to act at the beginning. Right.
Boy, you can say that about any relationship, really. Anything. I think we've all experienced that. You meet somebody and you're your best version of yourself in the beginning, right? And then as you get comfortable, then your quirks come out.
Right. Oh, yeah, we were all afraid of scaring somebody off, whether it be a new friend, new relationship, right? I don't want to be too much. Dogs kind of have that tendency as well. They're in a new environment. I don't really know what's going on. I'm going to lay low a little bit. I'm going to get a feeling for what's going on. But now I feel more comfortable. Now I'm going to start to act the way I want to act.
Right. I think too that because they have lost control and they have been so stressed out, so their baseline is definitely they're not as tolerant because they're operating already at a disadvantage because their stress levels are so high. So from a biological standpoint, their adrenaline and the cortisol levels are higher than a dog who's not chronically stressed. So they're going to have less tolerance to start with because they got more fuel, right? So
and
the spark is going to start the fire.
If you're talking about a municipal shelter, a lot of these dogs are stray dogs, which means they were out on the street. There could have been multiple people pulling. I think we've talked about this in another video, pulling over, trying to catch them. Animal control could have catched them. A catch pole could have been used to get them in. They were transported in the back of a truck that smells weird and a crate that's too small for them. You can also create some trauma there,
for sure.
that they're responding to as well. So,
Yep. And then a trauma response is your system is, it goes into your memory. So then a little thing triggers the biological response to an event based on past trauma, based on something that happened in the past. So that can happen to dogs just like it does to people. And then now you take this dog home and you put them on a leash and they've got all of these stress hormones already and all of this coping. And now we've taken away their abilities to get away, to create distance, to to just self-regulate, where they have no option, they have no opportunity to do it. So, and that's just the nature of where they live in our environment, right? So I think that also contributes to why rescue dogs in particular struggle so much with reactivity, right? They just have zero control over everything. I feel bad for them, actually. I really, really feel bad for them. So, okay, so now let's zoom out and let's look at this from a big picture standpoint, right? And let's talk about when we study free living dogs as an example of trying to understand why dogs in our environment struggle so much, right? So if we look at a free living dog, what is it that we see?
Well, I think there's a difference too between a layman watching it at home. You see a little cute video on the internet versus if you have looked into the lifestyle of a free living dog.
Of a dog.
A free living dog is a dog essentially that has to rely on their interpretations of the environment to survive.
Yes.
Right? So, counter to what we might think, they are creatures of predictability and habit. Because if they vary and they don't understand what could be the outcome of that variance, it could mean something detrimental. Very, very detrimental.
Yes.
Right? They often know the dogs that live in their immediate area, and they know which dogs to avoid.
Yes.
So they have a sense of agency when it comes to, if I see that dog over the horizon, oh, off I go. I'm going to avoid. They are able to add distance, free will.
Yes.
Right? So if I don't like the way something looks, I'm out of here.
That's right.
I'm not going to interact with something.
That's right.
And ultimately, too, when you're living in this environment, conflict has huge, huge consequences.
Yes.
Right? One little puncture, one nick can get infected, and it can mean the end.
That's right.
So there's a consequence to getting into conflict with each other that ultimately they're going to try their best to avoid. Right? And I think this is where, if we're referencing earlier, is why are we seeing reactivity raise so much in our environment, is the structure of our society living with dogs over the last 10 to 15 years has really started to eat away at these natural coping mechanisms.
That's right. Yeah.
We do have leash laws. So you take your dog out in the public, we need to restrict their movement. They're not able to gain distance freely as they would want. A lot of the times we're walking the dogs on designated areas or designated sidewalks. So they're seeing another dog that they don't know necessarily. They don't have the opportunity to go and gauge out what dog is trustworthy or not. But I see you straight in front of me, approaching me at a small distance head on in a very small area.
Yep.
That would never happen to a free living dog unless we were about to have conflict. So it creates this dilemma within the dog internally of, what do I do here? Right? And I can't escape, right? My guardian isn't giving me any direction. This dog is still approaching. Now I'm going to have to choose a way to act. And that often comes down to that fight or flight instinct. But as we just said, flight isn't on the table.
Yeah. And I believe that many people miss the signs that the dog is uncomfortable. So we are still forcing them to move ahead and move towards things that they're actually uncomfortable with. And because they're on a leash, they have no ability to move away. They have no ability to make themselves comfortable. They can't find that safe space for themselves because we're the ones who are actually controlling where they go and how they move. So, and then of course, even the movement, even something as simple as movement, like you were saying, when the dogs are on a sidewalk and they're approaching each other head on, that's completely unnatural for a dog. To approach straight on like that is very confrontational, and it is not the way they would be approaching each other if they were loose and out in an environment without us controlling their movements. They would curve on their approach to avoid the misunderstanding that there's a conflict, right? And I think that we take away a lot of that.
And here's a bit of the elephant in the room too when we're talking about rescue dogs. There are a lot of rescues and rescue dogs that were once former free living dogs.
Oh, yes, there are.
Right?
Yes.
We won't get into the political aspect of that, but a lot of places focus on bringing in street dogs, focus on bringing in northern dogs, right? And those dogs, for however many years of their life, have lived this way with these coping strategies, now in an environment where what we're asking them to do is so counterintuitive to what their lived experience is, that itself creates such distress.
You can only imagine, if that was you and somebody took you and said, okay, Ed, yeah, right?
Yep.
I'm hooking this onto you, and you can't go and meet people who you want. I'm going to make you meet all these strange people, or
Yeah.
I'm going to make you meet all of these strange animals. And if you're uncomfortable, too bad. You're just going to have
Especially
to
if you
do it.
transport me to an environment, you bring me to a foreign country with a language I don't speak,
exactly,
with people I don't
right?
trust, and it's like, well, now it's
Yeah.
going to be very difficult for me to navigate that without
right.
maybe appearing
Yeah.
fearful or
Right.
aggressive or withdrawn or reactive or
Yep.
whatever it is.
Yep,
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
That therein lies the challenge. Our environment really that's the key. Our environment, our laws, our expectations of how dogs are supposed to behave and what they should be able to accept and not accept actually is significantly contributed to why our reactivity problem, right, has become so, I would say, epidemic.
Yeah.
It's epidemic. It is a massive concern for many people.
I'd say the majority of our clients, like if we're talking about our behavior clients, probably every other one is dealing with some sort of reactive type behavior that we're having to diagnose and figure out, okay, what is going on here? What's truly at play?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good
tough.
segue into like, what is it that we can tell people today that I think would be great to share some of the things we get people to do as foundation. Like we don't teach skills in the beginning. It's not about teaching skills. It's about setting up the dogs for success and setting up the people for success and helping them understand how we can help these dogs naturally regulate their emotions and their nervous system so that they can think. So you can teach them skills. In the beginning, we really can't do that, right? So let's talk about what are some of the things we can do to help people help their dogs.
Okay. Well, I want to just give a brief explanation of what I would try to accomplish with whatever we are saying after this.
Yep.
Is if what we're saying is that reactivity is this relationship between fuel and spark that is then creating this eruption.
Yep.
A lot of our initial focus when we're dealing with clients, things that you can do tonight before we worry about anything else that we get into, it's trying to minimize the amount of fuel that is available to burn.
Absolutely.
Right? So whether that be an arousal level, like something we've talked about in a previous video. If your dog is over aroused, if they are in that overwhelmed, overflow type of emotional state, you are going to get a much elevated response in a dog that is easier to get to threshold or that eruption point than you would if your dog was calm and relaxed and just out there thinking and evaluating. Right. So strategies that we can do to encourage that would be things like gaining distance. Right. And I'm not talking about avoiding here necessarily, right? We don't want to just, you can as right in the moment for a safety wise, turn around and get out of dodge. But ultimately it's just adding some space, taking the pressure away from thinking that a meeting with that other dog or person is inevitable. Right. We could be doing things like predictable behavior patterns, something that we can establish right away. And this could be as simple as, getting my dog to touch, getting some sort of sequence of things like I'm going to step off to the side and get my dog to sit and focus on me. Anything there where we're going to try and reduce that emotional, that arousal level.
Right. Yep. Naturally moving in arches. So changing our pattern of walking in straight lines, right? And just giving them a little bit more of an arched approach to things, I think is another way that we can help reduce the stress levels and the arousal levels in our dogs so that they feel less confrontational when they're walking out there. I think
just imagine two dogs walking head on towards each other. And each owner is a little bit conscious in this moment. And they each take just, a few steps off to the side and put their dogs on the other side of them. Right? We're not saying run across the street and get out of there. What we're saying is you're just adding a very clear declaration to the other dog of, oh, no, I'm not coming to bother you. No, we're going to get out. We're going to bubble. Maybe you go up onto the boulevard a little bit and I get up onto the grass here just a little bit and just give a little bit of a buffer zone as we pass each other so that we can try and keep our dogs calmer. And then again, through that kind of declaration of our body language to say that we're not here to have conflict.
That's right. Yep. I like using natural dog behaviors to help the dog feel like they have some control and some agency. So, for instance, I pay really close attention to does my dog want to meet somebody or meet another dog? So if it's an issue of a dog that is frustrated. It's like, is meeting what they want? Because sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It's us who thinks that's what the dog wants, and then we're pushing them into situations they're actually not comfortable with. So just giving that dog a sense of control over its own safety and over its own environment can help a great deal. So we work a lot with that in our reactivity clinics.
What would be like an example of that?
So for instance, when we work in, I don't tighten up on the leash. That's number one, right? So if my dog is feeling like they have no agency or no control, I got to give them a little more room to move, right? So I want them to be able to move a little bit. So it's not about healing. It's not about being beside me and healing. It's really about giving the dog. So I want to loosen up on the leash, not tighten up on the leash.
Which I think instinctually a lot of people go, oh no, my dog might respond. I'm going to tighten on the leash. But you are confirming to that dog there's no retreat.
That's right. So the steps are, I create some distance so that my dog already their arousal is lowering because they have some distance, right? I give them some room so that they have room to move, right? I may encourage a natural behavior like some sniffing work, because sniffing, as we learned last week, helps lower their arousal as well. So I'll give them some distance. I relax the leash. I might do, we call it 2x2 sniffing or a treat scatter into the grass, let the dog sniff when they're a safe distance from the trigger so that they have a chance to calm themselves down, calm their nervous system down. That might be like the next step in what I would do initially, just to help a dog get control over their nervous system.
And if we don't use those things exactly in the presence of the other dog, where they do absolutely have value as well is afterwards in a bit of a decompression.
Exactly.
Right? So I personally might not necessarily in the presence, I see another dog or throw food on the ground.
No,
that's not going to solve the issue that you think. But if I can get some distance, if I can get them paying more attention to me, maybe we do that little bubbling like we're talking about.
That's right.
I maybe ask for a touch to get their attention on me.
Yeah.
Once we pass that other dog, then now maybe I throw some treats in the ground and let them scatter, because I'm encouraging the sniffing to bring them back down to a more baseline level.
Yep. Right. Another thing is to slow down a little bit, right? So I think what happens is when you have a dog that's reacting is we react too. So we tend to tighten up and speed up, and we just want to kind of get past it. And, so slowing it down so that we're not in such a rush, taking a deep breath, actually giving the dog a chance from that distance to just regulate themselves is a really good way. I don't like staying still. I don't like to do that, because then the dog can fixate and then they can actually have more adrenaline.
And then all those strategies are really, really important. But I think the most important thing is recognizing your dog's signaling, recognizing when they are becoming, fearful or anxious or getting elevated, so that you can start to accomplish these things before you see a visible reaction. Yeah. Right? If we wait till my dog now is barking and lunging, really what we're doing there now is we're just trying to get out.
It's an emergency exit.
It's an emergency exit.
Yes.
We do whatever you need to make sure that you're staying safe and that your dog is safe, and you just get out of there. These strategies we're talking about, the bubbling and getting some consistent behavior patterns and maybe doing a decompression afterwards, that is things you want to proactively be supplying your dog, so that they don't feel like they need to choose how to react.
Right.
Right. You are guiding and coaching them to say, all right, I see it too, buddy. Here's what we're going to do.
Yep.
Right. And then your dog, if they can rely on you predictably doing that on a regular basis, is going to then defer to you in those moments.
Yep. So I think this is a really good place for us to end the show today. Was talking about our talk about reactivity. One of the things that I want people to remember is reactivity. The number one message for me, it's not a character flaw or personality flaw of the dog, that it's actually the dog doing the best they can with what they know and the tools they've got and the affordances they have to control their environment and make themselves feel safe and to calm their system down, calm their nervous system down. So we hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we hope that you got some valuable takeaways if you're struggling with a dog with reactivity. We've given you some ideas on how to initially start helping your dog calm their system down and regulate themselves, and some different tools that you can do just in the beginning phases to just begin the process of reducing the reactivity. If you're still struggling with reactivity or if the dog is severely reactive, we do strongly recommend that you get a professional trainer involved to help you go further and deeper into the why, and to also understand different tools that you can use to help that dog even further than what we've talked about today. You can, of course, contact us, Unified K9 Behaviour Centre. It's info@Unified K9, that's letter K, number 9.ca. We have virtual training sessions, so you can talk to us virtually, or you can come to see us in person if you're within driving range of Newmarket, Ontario. But we do reactivity virtually as well. In the meantime, next week we're going to be talking about puppies. So
My favorite.
Please subscribe and feel free to share this episode with anybody that you think needs to have a better understanding of reactivity. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss our future episodes of the Friday Fireside Chat. And until next week, we will see you then. I'm Karen. This is Ed. See you next week, everybody.
Bye.